really common to everywhere in Zambia is the lack of data. There is data being collected because it's required, but it's not necessarily the data that's relevant. It has to do more with attendance, not necessarily with performance or the actual, pupils that are attending school. And it's always flowing up. It's never flowing down. So the schools report, they don't ever really get to use that data. If they do ever see the results of the data, they see it, months or years later. So it's not used for decision making. The second thing is, the need to focus on reading and the appreciation that's really coming up now about why reading is an important indicator of the health of the school system. So using reading as a building block for measuring performance. And then third thing is the lack of communication is very evident. There isn't knowledge being shared. When we gather these administrators together, it's the first time they're sharing this type of information together and sharing what's not working or what is working. So there really is a clear need to develop better communication systems, both with common levels and then across the different levels of the education system. So that's really what I wanted to say about strategic planning. And I'm going to let Munyongo talk a little bit more about what the next is.
Thank you, Sarah. I think perhaps before I get to where we're moving as far as the strategic planning exercise, I wanted to speak to the idea that Cecilia put across at the beginning, which was that of having a multifaceted approach to addressing the education challenges in the country. Now, in the Zambian education sector, of course, you have different actors and different tiers of involvement. You have the primary level, the secondary, and of course the higher education institutions. And you find that in the working relationships, the higher education institutions tend to be a little bit isolated from the other two tiers, the primary and the secondary, which are really managed by the Ministry of Education. And the higher institutions, which sometimes are private, sometimes public, don't seem to have a strong relationship with the ministry itself, which is the one formulating all the policies that are guiding how the education system is managed in the country. And that is one area of focus that we as Step Up are investing into. We're trying to see how we can bring these higher education institutions to work more closely with the ministry and try and get them to inform the policy-making process. However, we don't want them to just be doing it on their own, but rather getting them to investigate and look into the education challenges that the ministry sees as a priority. Because more often than not, you find at the ground level, your teacher, your school head teacher, or even your district education officer, or any other education official, they're very attuned to the challenges that they're facing. So the biggest problem that they have is that they don't have relevant evidence to be able to substantiate some of the claims that they're making. So how then can we get them, or how can we empower them better to be able to articulate these issues to the ministry and make a case for the change that we're advocating for as far as reading is concerned, or any other policy challenges that might be there. Moving back a little bit towards what Sarah was talking about in the strategic planning process, we, as an output of the strategic planning process, we were getting at priorities. But getting those priorities to speak to what the higher education institutions are also focusing on and that is the next step in what we will be doing. And in the first year, we were only able to focus on one region of the country, which is the southern part, really as a case scenario to try and demonstrate exactly what we're trying to do with Step Up. So we used strategic planning documents to try and hone in on some of the challenges which were going on in Southern Province, and this had to do with things like children being passed through the education system, the lack of teaching and learning materials, and how sometimes teachers felt they didn't have the necessary support from the district education office or the provincial office to be able to make a case for some of the problems they were facing. So based on that, we were able to bring together the higher ed institutions, the district office and the provincial education office to begin to look at the strategic planning document, the strategic plan again, and see, well, based on priorities education officials thought were important, how could the higher ed institutions pick up on some of those issues and investigate them? And I think we are there as far as that is concerned. The issues were articulated. We were able to come up with 3 issues for research. We have data collection that's and the analysis that will come out of that, we can bring the different players back to the table to really look at what can they be advocating for, what are some of the specific issues that they've come to learn as a result of the research that they've been able to do together. And I think that's the general direction in which we'll be going. And out of all that, what I'm really trying to say is that we want to get not just people sitting together at the table and talking about these issues, but more importantly, it's about trying to get them to document it, trying to leverage the different strengths of the different players and see how best can they coordinate efforts, how can they work together in a more coordinated fashion that allows or empowers the ministry officials to be talking about the real policy challenges that are out there, rather than just churning out policies which they feel are relevant at the time based on their own central level of thinking, but something that speaks to the school teacher, something that speaks to the district officer and the provincial officer. So creating an agenda that's really driven from a grassroots approach. And I think really that's what I would say in a nutshell. And maybe as Louise had also been pointing out earlier on, you know, as step up, really it's a new paradigm shift in terms of how things are done, moving from a very centralized way of getting policies done and getting directives through to people, rather to empowering people at the grassroots level to be able to articulate their needs, get the voice to be able to speak up about them, and also get the relevant evidence they need in order to be heard. So maybe do you want to?
Yeah, I want to